Putin answering one of the questions, he said explicitly, everybody who's saying that Russia is not doing enough to help Iran, these people are provocateurs. And he was enraged when he said that, which means that, yes, for the moment they are helping Iran in legalistic diplomatic ways, but if there's need to help them militarily, it will happen. At the same time, the Russians they have to keep their eye on the ball here on their western border. So it's a very complex situation. As much as these forever wars are intertwined, for Russia, the absolute priority is here. It's not West Asia. As much as for China, China doesn't know it as China, the priority for China is energy and infrastructure built in their strategic partnership and the deal that they signed with Iran. At the same time, they don't depend so much from Iranian energy because they have providers, suppliers all over the spectrum in Eurasia, including Russia. If China would be desperate to get some extra gas, Russia could provide it over land, in fact. So the Chinese, it's fascinating. I've been going through some of the Chinese think tank analysis. They have a fascinating metaphor, and they are concentrating on that. They're concentrating on defense. Do you know how they describe Iran? Typical Chinese metaphor. Iran has a very powerful spear, but a very weak shield. It's beautiful. Explains everything. Basically, the Chinese saying, guys, get plane loads of S-400s like yesterday. This is what they're saying. Or buy from us. But of course, proven is S-300s, S-400s, and the S-500s, Russia is not selling the S-500s. It's for internal consumption. But this could have been part of the package that was asked of Russia this afternoon here in Moscow. But the Chinese are not, the Chinese are just observing the game of Go. They started to identify in a very Chinese way that maybe Iran is starting to play a game of Go against both Israel and the US. Only the Chinese can come up with this kind of analysis, right? But they are worried about how vulnerable Iran is on the Western flank in terms of daily Israeli attacks. It's fascinating to see the chessboard moving and the analysis of the chessboard moving across Eurasia. For instance, during St. Petersburg, we should talk about St. Petersburg. I know the whole global South was there. I was sending updates every day and wrap-ups of and if everything was related to the global South everybody talking to each other and talking about connectivity corridors, creating a new system of international relations and international financial system, business deals. There were round tables on absolutely everything. The Russia-China one was packed with Chinese businessmen, Russian governors, representatives of shipping companies. The panel about the North Sea route, the Arctic Silk Road, was fascinating. We did lots of details of how Russia is building one of the key connectivity corridors of the 21st century. There were round tables on BRICS, SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Eurasia Economic Union, ASEAN, the International North-South Transportation Corridor, everything. So if you were there, the feeling was that you were watching the global South, everybody talking to each other and trying to build this drive towards real multipolarity. And of course, Iran, the Israeli attack on Iran was part of virtually every conversation. Little did we know that a few hours later, the Americans would enter the war. In fact, this was not, and even during the plenary session, which, by the way, was a global South plenary session, we had 4 BRICS on the table. Russia, China, Indonesia, and South Africa. And Indonesia represented by President Prabowo, and he was the guest of honor of Putin at the St. Petersburg Forum. And Bahrain as well, representing the GCC. There were a few questions about Iran, etc., but Putin gave a very important answer on, are we on the verge of a third world war? And basically he said, well, depending on, translating what he said is that depending on us, Global South, not. But if it comes from the other side, you have to be ready for it. And he defended Iran's legitimate rights to have a civilian nuclear program. So this is important as a background to all of you, because I'm sure all of you are honest. Very few of you probably were in St. Petersburg or were paying attention to what was being discussed in St. Petersburg. And it's the most important economic forum of the year. No competition. I heard this from, there were a few Americans over there, including American businessmen, and they were saying, this is much more important than Davos. And it is. Because Davos, there's no Global South. Davos is the Atlanticist elites. St. Petersburg is the real Global South. You have delegations from Africa everywhere. A sizable Indian delegation. The Pakistanis were there. People from Central Asia everywhere. Lots of African delegations. So it is the Global South discussing everything towards this new world. And then a few hours later, the old regime intervenes, which is the desperation of the empire. Wag that dog. We don't know. We don't know which tail is. What is the tail? What is the dog? Whatever, you know. But it's the same thing as we know. In desperation, in its war against the Global South and BRICS. So the U.S. was and is at war with everything that was being discussed in St. Petersburg, and is at war with BRICS, and is at war with the three top BRICS simultaneously: Iran, Russia, and China. And this war on Iran, which theoretically the circus ringmaster entered, and now he's trying to find a way out, is a war that the American elites behind, the Trump donors, the people who really run the show in the US, for them is absolutely essential. They need to break up Eurasia integration. That's why they need to break up BRICS, and that's why they need to break up the interaction between Iran, Russia, and China. So what if they have the son of the Shah back in Iran, and a weak Iran, as weak as Syria now, which fell on their laps? They can isolate the Belt and Road, New Silk Road corridors across Iran. Iran is the crossroads of all these connectivity corridors. They can be in the underbelly of Russia and start threatening Russia with another terrorist front in the underbelly of Russia. They can collapse the international north-south transportation corridor, which is Russia, Iran, and then India. So they can immobilize three BRICS in one go. So they won't let it go, Nima. This is just the beginning. This is a long war, and now we have a hot chapter. And this is just unfortunately for all of us, we are hostages of this dementia. This is just the beginning. It's probably their last big card. If we split Iran, Russia, and China, we may have a shot at prolonging our unilateral domination. If we fail, bye-bye empire.
Yeah, well, as you were talking and you mentioned Syria, I was thinking about this retaliation, the symbolic retaliation by Iran on the airbase in Qatar. And it made me think about how this sends a message that Iran can hit U.S. assets, and in doing so is able to fight, in what they've been saying, that they can fight a long war simultaneously against Israel and the United States. And Syria was, while it fell in 2024 of, I believe that was December, that took, what was that, 13 years? So we're talking about Iran now in a position where, as you said, China said they have a weak shield, but they have a very strong, what was it, spear space. But they have offensive capabilities that are very strong. Their defensive capabilities are weak, and that means this war could be very, very, very long. And it appears that Iran is very much looking at the strategy of defending themselves to the point where the costs are just too large for the empire. What's your assessment of this?
I am not so sure that some of the top Chinese think tanks understand in detail how this war is against them already in Iran. They have an enormous problem understanding Shiites and understanding how the Islamic Republic of Iran system works, which is a very complex matter. I agree. The Chinese that understand that and that I could talk to, they are usually Houis, Chinese Muslims, very well educated, and they have been to Iran a few times. So they have practical experience of Iran, and they saw how the system works. The Chinese think tanks, there are, let's say, American-oriented, essentially, or Western-oriented. They have no idea about Iran. And what this partnership Iran-China really means. Some of them, for instance, and these are very well-prepared people. You read their papers, they are complaining that the Iranians are ungrateful to China. This level, it's absurd. So there is a lost in translation element, definitely, a miscommunication problem. Russia sees this clearly here, and some of the best minds were in St. Petersburg, and they completely understand that these wars are completely intertwined, and they are forever wars. The proxy war in Ukraine and the proxy war against Russia, and especially against China, with the US using Israel against Iran, which is a war against Iran, using Israel, and long-term, a war against China to break up Chinese channels of communication with West Asia. So this is a serious problem. Ideally, okay, this is I'm daydreaming a little bit. A coalition of scholars and think tanks, BRICS-wise, could be established to study all these declinations of imperial attack and, in fact, dementia in a holistic way, in an integrated way, and showing how this hybrid wars by the empire against BRICS members are part of the bigger war against the BRICS and the global south as a whole. Because the empire they need more territory, they badly need more natural resources and energy, wherever that is. In the case of the Middle East, obviously oil and gas, so they can control everything and perpetuate the unilateral domination that they enjoyed for decades since 1945. It comes back to what the most radical global South thinkers are saying up front. If we don't come up with their own platforms, paradigms, systems, completely different from everything that was established by the Americans and imposed by the Americans after the end of the Second World War, we will continue to be dominated by them and be their slaves, essentially. Everybody says that. From Michael Hudson to a Bolivian ex-minister, which said exactly what I'm telling you now in Yemen in front of the former prime minister of Yemen. And this is what Ibrahim Traoré is basically saying in Burkina Faso. This is the key. And so, which brings us to what's going to happen at BRICS. Unfortunately, because the meek Brazilians are at the presidency, this is going to be a very disappointing BRICS meeting. So everything will be reported to the BRICS summit next year, which is going to be in South Africa. So we discussed this, obviously, and in many roundtables, this was discussed in St. Petersburg last week. And the Russians and ultra qualified Russians who follow the BRICS business discussions, for instance, or heads of think tanks, etc., they're saying, well, compared to what we did last year, the Brazilians did nothing this year. This is what they tell you, behind the scenes, which is true. Unfortunately, So, but this is what we've been discussing this past 5 minutes. This is what should be at the BRICS table in Rio. Okay, we are being attacked all over by the empire. The empire wants to play divide and rule with all of us and literally destroy some of us. How are we going to get our act together and act together geoeconomically, geopolitically, in the information sphere, in the AI sphere, etc., to counteract? There was an excellent panel on fake news and artificial intelligence. This was the panel I was in. I had the pleasure to be in with Maria Zakharova and former Austrian Foreign Minister Karin Nyssen. Karin, now she's heading a think tank in St. Petersburg. And we were discussing how, for instance, how Brussels, how the European Commission is a fake news factory, how the former administration of that cadaver in the White House was a fake news factory, how the Trump administration now is a fake news factory. So how do you, and of course, how big tech, and now that we have Palantir integrated inside the federal government in the United States, they will be a monster fake news factory as well. Ultra sophisticated, totally digitalized, controlling everything, controlling all the narratives. So all of us in the Global South, this is what we're fighting for. It's not a joke. It's extremely serious. So if we don't have an integrated effort, it will be very easy for the empire to pick one by one and smash them all, which is what they believe they could do with Iran. But they chose the wrong adversary this time. The good old saying applies. Iran is not Iraq. Iran is not Libya. Iran is not Syria. Iran is not Afghanistan. Now you're going to see, this is the real deal. This is an ancient civilization cum regional power. It's not a joke. With 90 million people. Try telling this to that stupid Marco Rubio who doesn't know how many people live in Iran.
To the end here, I wanted to put up exactly as you said. You said, this is a war on BRICS. Iran is a major player in BRICS. And you have Donald Trump himself just absolutely exposing how this is the agenda here. It's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be regime change? This is straight from the horse's mouth. Regime change.
He gave the game away. Yes, he gave the game away because of that ego the size of Neptune. He had to give it away. No?
Yeah,
it's part of the person.
Yeah. And then just I definitely want your analysis after this, because it's, as you said, not only is this a war on BRICS and that the regime change is the modus operandi, but you also have panic. There is real concern about what could happen should this conflict move to a conclusion that is quite logical, which is the global economy being heavily affected by something like even a partial shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz, which the Trump administration is saying, everyone keep oil prices down. I'm watching. You're playing right into the hands of the enemy. Don't do it. This sounds like panic and
childish panic. This it's like a 5-year-old is writing these posts. Wow, it's the lowest common denominator on anything. There's not 1 inch of analysis of reflection about what's going on. Nothing. And he's ordering everybody to do. Oh, you have to do what I want, otherwise I'm going to throw a fit. It's beyond ridiculous. The only good thing about this stupid post is that he gave the game away. Yes, it's a regime change war. No question. Main headline, this is a regime change war. Sub-headline, this is a war against BRICS. That's it. This explains everything that is going on.
And this is such a historic moment, Pepe. You know,
tell me about it. I thought I had seen everything in my life. Not really.
The acceleration of this, though, is quite striking. Maybe talk about what are the things that you're thinking about in terms of what to watch out for. We know Iran is going to continue its operation, True Promise, 20 plus. And we also have promises from the United States. I don't know if this is in the cards now or sometime in the future that there will be more strikes on Iran should Iran not capitulate.
And don't forget the 500 tariff, which may be approved within the next 2 to 3 weeks. And we should all pay very close attention to the Trump administration reaction to the BRICS summit. There won't be something out of this world coming out of the BRICS summit. But even if there is a hint of unity among BRICS and a declaration that is forceful, defending BRICS, defending the BRICS project, which will go completely against the American project, which is divide and rule and chaos, how the Trump administration is going to react about that. And of course, after 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to see the results of the, let's say, the calculated Iranian strategy of strategic offense. Welcome to a long, hot summer.
Okay. Is this a war? You know, the United States is talking very confidently about its capabilities, what it can do to Iran. But I again go back to Syria and Iraq, and there's a lot of officials that are speaking secretly, anonymously, saying, well, what happened in Iraq, Afghanistan, even Syria took a long time, and that's not a stable situation. Iran is a different beast in many respects. So is this a war that the U.S. empire can win, Pepe?
No, they can't. And of course, the ones who are outside of the empire, former deep state operatives, former CIA, many of them our friends, they know by experience that the empire of chaos cannot win this war. And still they go. Well, this is the inertia that moves empires when they are dwindling and when they are on their last legs. This one, the last legs, may last quite a while, even a few decades, but it's inevitable. And I love the Putin metaphor in St. Petersburg. It's not that Russia and China are driving the multipolar world. The multipolar world is becoming inevitable like sunrise. We're just making it more, I don't remember exactly the word, but we are facilitating the birth of the multipolar world. This is exactly what he said. So it's great. It's a very simple metaphor, but it conveys the inevitability of a historical trend. There's no question about that. Try to explain that, Danny, to the American elites, the people running the show behind everything, including the circus ringmaster. It's the ultimate anathema. It's everything it's the geopolitical nightmare par excellence for all of them. If they were paying attention to Brzezinski, and they did, all of these guys read Brzezinski, and they thought that the Grand Chessboard in 1997 was brilliant. It's happening now in front of their eyes. And there's not much they can do about it except bomb, 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 bomb like crazy. Is that enough to secure empire dominance? No, it's not.
No,
the world is
yeah.
moving. The world is already moving the other way. So that's what, you know, the contrast between St. Petersburg is so stark, but it's so clear. If you're following both sides, it's very, very clear. But it's going to be a very tough, long struggle and very painful.
Yeah.
They won't let go.
No.
And the images that the image that Putin used of sunshine, I could contrapose with a Bob Dylan image. A long dark cloud is coming down. The empire is the long dark cloud coming down over all of us and trying to obliterate the sunshine. So it's up to all of us to make sure that the sun really shines, rises and shines. So this is wow. Talk about an existential situation. This is the destiny of the 21st century and beyond. It's right in front of us. It's being played now.